Chapter 13. The Gathering Storm. The morning came faster than Louis would have liked. His mind still reeled from the conversation the night before, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. Zane's apartment was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. Harry was still asleep beside him, his face peaceful despite the storm they were heading into. Louis slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him, and headed into the kitchen. Zane was already there, leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee in hand. His sharp eyes met Louis', and without a word, he slid a cup across the table toward him. "You ready for this?" Zane asked, his voice low and steady. Louis took the coffee, nodding, though his stomach churned. "We don't have a choice. If we don't act now, it's only going to get worse." Zane's gaze darkened as he set his cup down. "I made a few calls last night. Got some people who might be willing to talk, but we'll need more than their word to expose what's really happening." Louis took a sip of his coffee, his mind racing. "What are we looking for exactly? What kind of proof do we need?" Zane leaned forward, lowering his voice. "These people, the ones running the music industry, aren't just record label execs. They're connected to something much bigger. There's a reason why certain artists rise to fame while others disappear overnight. It's not just about talent or luck. It's about what deals you're willing to make, how far you're willing to go to stay on top." Louis felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had known the industry was cutthroat, but this was far beyond anything he had imagined. They control everything: artists' images, their voices, their entire careers. And if anyone tries to break free or speak out, they'll find themselves silenced. Permanently, Zane continued, his voice hard. "And it's not just music. Hollywood's tied up in it too. The whole entertainment industry is under their thumb." Louis stared at Zane, the gravity of what they were up against sinking in. "So how do we take them down?" Zane glanced around the room, as if the walls had ears. "There are documents, contracts with hidden clauses, financial records that link them to certain corporations. If we can get our hands on those, we'll have enough to blow the lid off the entire operation." Louis leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The people they were up against weren't just powerful, they were untouchable. But if they didn't try, there would be no way out for either of them. Just as Louis was about to respond, the sound of footsteps caught his attention. Harry appeared in the doorway, still groggy from sleep, his face etched with concern. "What's going on?" Harry asked, rubbing his eyes as he approached the kitchen. Louis hesitated, unsure of how much to tell him. But Harry had been with him through everything, he deserved to know the full truth. "We're going after them," Louis said quietly. "The people behind the industry. Zane thinks he can help us find proof." Harry's eyes widened, and he looked between Louis and Zane. "Are you sure this is a good idea? What if it's too dangerous?" "It's already dangerous," Louis replied, his voice steady but tense. "But we can't keep running. If we don't take this shot, they'll never stop coming for us." Harry bit his lip, torn between fear and the need to stand by Louis' side. But after a moment, he nodded. "I'm with you. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Zane pushed off the counter, checking his phone. "I've set up a meeting with someone who used to be deep in this world. He knows where the bodies are buried. But he's paranoid, won't meet unless we're discreet." Louis' stomach twisted with anxiety, but he nodded. "Where's the meeting?" Zane glanced at his phone again. "An old warehouse near the docks. It's remote. No one should be able to track us there." Harry moved closer to Louis, his fingers brushing his arm. "Are you sure we can trust this guy?" Zane's eyes darkened. "We don't have much choice. If we want proof, he's our best bet." The warehouse was desolate and eerie, the kind of place where secrets thrived. It was cold, the chill of the air seeping into Louis' bones as he, Zane, and Harry made their way inside. The floor was cracked, rusted beams looming overhead, casting long shadows across the concrete. Zane led the way, his eyes sharp as he scanned the area. Louis' heart raced, his mind buzzing with what could go wrong. Harry stayed close, his hand brushing against Louis' occasionally, a silent reassurance. In the far corner of the warehouse, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, gaunt man in a long coat, his face partially hidden by the brim of a worn hat. His presence was cold, his movements calculated as he approached them. "You Zane?" the man asked, his voice gravelly. Zane nodded. "You got the information." The man looked around, his eyes darting nervously to the exits before he spoke again. "You don't know what you're getting into. These people, they don't just make you disappear. They'll erase you, make it like you never existed." Louis clenched his jaw. "We don't have a choice. We're already in their sights. We just need proof, something solid." The man hesitated for a moment, then pulled a small flash drive from his coat pocket. "This has some of the files you're looking for. Contracts, emails, bank transfers. It's enough to start, but it's not everything. You'll need more to take them down." Louis took the drive, his fingers trembling slightly. This was it, the key to exposing everything. But as he pocketed the drive, the man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Watch your back," he warned. "They'll know you have this. And when they come for you, don't say I didn't warn you." Before Louis could respond, the man melted back into the shadows, leaving them standing in the cold, empty warehouse. Louis turned to Zane and Harry, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. This was the beginning of something huge and dangerous. "We've got what we need to start," Zane said quietly, glancing at the drive in Louis's hand. "But it's only going to get harder from here." Louis nodded, his mind already racing with the next steps. They had to move fast, before the people controlling the industry realized what they were up to. Harry slipped his hand into Louis's, his grip tight, his eyes filled with worry. "We'll figure this out, together." Louis looked at him, his heart swelling with determination despite the fear gnawing at him. They were in this together, no matter how dangerous it got. As they made their way back out of the warehouse, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was coming, and they were about to be caught right in the middle of it. The cold air bit at Louis's skin as they left the warehouse, the silence weighing heavy on them. Zane led the way out, his face unreadable, while Harry's hand remained firmly intertwined with Louis's. The flash drive felt heavier in Louis's pocket than it should have, its contents a ticking time bomb. As they reached Zane's car, Louis stopped, glancing around the empty docks. His heart raced, his nerves on edge. This was no longer just about escaping the industry's grip. They were actively defying something far more sinister. "Where do we even go from here?" Harry asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of what they'd just learned settled between them like a fog. "We've got the files, but what if they find us before we can do anything with them?" Louis squeezed his hand, meeting his eyes. "We're not alone. We've got Zane, and we'll get more help. But we have to be smart about it. We can't just go straight to the press. This is deeper than anything we've faced before." Zane unlocked the car but hesitated before getting in. "He's right. We need to be careful. The people we're dealing with, they've got eyes and ears everywhere." He looked back at Louis and Harry, his face serious. "We need to lay low for a bit, gather more information. This flash drive is only the beginning." Louis nodded in agreement, his mind already racing through the possibilities. "I know someone who might be able to help us decode what's on the drive," he said. "But it's risky. We'll have to move fast." Harry glanced at him with a concerned frown. "Who?" Louis paused, debating how much to reveal. "An old contact of mine. Let's just say, she's no stranger to the darker side of the industry. But she's clean now. We can trust her." Zane raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" Louis met his gaze with determination. "She's our best shot at understanding what we're dealing with. And if there's anyone who knows how to stay off the radar, it's her." Before Zane could reply, the sound of distant footsteps echoed from the other side of the docks. Instinctively, they all froze, their eyes darting toward the noise. The eerie quiet of the night amplified every little sound. "We need to go," Louis whispered urgently, motioning toward the car. "Now." They hurried into the car, Zane starting the engine without hesitation. As they drove away from the docks, Louis glanced in the rearview mirror, his heart pounding as the empty roads faded into the distance. "We're not safe here," Zane said, his voice tense. "We should head somewhere they won't expect." Harry looked at Louis, worry etched into his features. "Where can we even go?" Louis thought for a moment before answering. There's a cabin a few hours away. Remote, off the grid. It's where I used to go when I needed to disappear for a while. Zane glanced at him, surprised. You think they won't find us there? They won't look for us in a place that doesn't exist on any map, Louis replied, determination hardening in his voice. Trust me, it's safe. The rest of the drive was tense, the silence between them filled with unspoken fears. Every car that passed, every shadow that flickered in the streetlights, felt like a potential threat. Louis's mind raced, planning their next steps, while Harry leaned against his shoulder, his hand still clasping Louis's tightly. After what felt like hours, they finally arrived at the cabin. It was nestled deep in the woods, hidden away from prying eyes. The night was dark, and the surrounding trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. This is it, Louis said, stepping out of the car and leading the way to the small, unassuming building. The air was crisp, and the only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind. They entered the cabin, its interior dimly lit by the soft glow of a lantern. The cabin was modest, with a small kitchen, a couple of worn couches, and a single bedroom. But it was safe, and that was all that mattered right now. We'll stay here for a few days, Louis said, closing the door behind them and locking it. Just until we figure out our next move. Zane nodded, setting his bag down by the couch. I'll reach out to some contacts in the morning. See if we can dig up more on who's running this operation. Harry walked over to the window, staring out into the dark forest. His shoulders were tense, and Louis could see the worry in his eyes. Hey, Louis said softly, walking over to him. We'll get through this. Harry glanced at him, his expression conflicted. It just feels like we're up against something way too big. Like we're just ants trying to fight giants. Louis wrapped his arms around Harry, pulling him close. Maybe, but we're not giving up. Not now. For a moment, they stood there in the silence of the cabin, holding on to each other as the weight of the world pressed down on them. Zane's voice broke through the quiet. I'm gonna take a look at that flash drive. See if we can find anything useful right away. Louis nodded, pulling back slightly from Harry. Yeah. Let's see what we're dealing with. Zane set up his laptop on the small kitchen table, plugging in the flash drive. The screen lit up with a series of files, contracts, financial statements, emails. Louis and Harry joined him at the table, their eyes scanning the documents as Zane clicked through them. Here, Zane muttered, stopping on one file. Look at this. The document was a contract, but not an ordinary one. The terms were cryptic, filled with clauses that made Louis's stomach turn. There were references to ownership of not just the artist's music, but their entire persona, images, interviews, even personal relationships. It was like the artists had sold their souls to these people. This is insane, Harry whispered, his eyes wide. They control everything. And it gets worse, Zane added, pulling up another file. These payments, they're not just going to the label. Look at where the money's being funneled. Offshore accounts, shell companies. This is all part of a much bigger operation. Louis leaned over the table, his eyes narrowing at the list of names tied to the transactions. Some were familiar, industry executives he'd dealt with before, but others were completely unknown to him. Shadowy figures operating behind the scenes, pulling the strings of the entire music industry. We're in deeper than I thought, Louis muttered, running a hand through his hair. These people, they're more than just industry sharks. They're part of something much bigger. Something global. Zane nodded grimly. This goes beyond music. It's about control. The people who run the industry also have their hands in Hollywood, politics, even media. They shape everything, the stories we hear, the music we listen to, the people we idolize. Harry's face paled. So, what does that mean for us? For you? Louis shook his head, unsure of how to answer. The truth was, they were standing on the edge of something massive, something dangerous. And if they weren't careful, it could swallow them whole. We keep going, Louis said finally, his voice steady. We gather more evidence. We expose them for what they are. But how? Harry asked, his voice trembling slightly. If they're as powerful as we think, how do we take them down without getting killed? Louis took a deep breath, his determination unwavering. We find people who are willing to stand with us. Other artists, maybe even industry insiders who are tired of being controlled. We build a case so big, they can't ignore it. Zayn closed the laptop, his expression serious. It's risky, but you're right. If we want any chance of taking them down, we need to hit them where it hurts. Louis met Zayn's gaze, a silent agreement passing between them. They were in this together now, and there was no turning back. As the night wore on, the three of them planned the next steps, the weight of the battle ahead looming over them. But despite the fear, there was a flicker of hope, a chance to finally break free from the chains of the industry. And as Louis lay next to Harry that night, staring up at the dark ceiling of the cabin, he knew one thing for sure. They were ready for the fight of their lives.